Our second scripture lesson for today comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 13 through 20. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly, I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter nor the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Please pray with me. Dear God, you come into our hearts. You change us fundamentally. Help these words of yours change us still. Amen. A couple of months ago on Netflix, my family and I watched a television show about cooking. It was called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. And it has an entire episode dedicated to the use of salt in various cuisines from around the world. The show's host, Sam and Nazareth, talked about how every culture has their own historic favorite way of using salt in their cooking and preserving their food. During the show, she investigated how in China there are regional family recipes for their beloved salty soy sauce that have been passed down for generations, and how in Japan, miso, a soybean paste, has traditionally been used to provide salt to season their dishes. She talked about the difference between coarse salts and finely ground salts, pink Himalayan salt and kosher salt. She spoke about how different salts have different intensities. But most of all, what got her attention was the generous amounts of salt that this chef used in her cooking. She would reach in and grab handfuls of it. From rice to meat to the water for pasta, she did not hesitate to use this condiment of salt with an extremely generous hand. Now, such an extravagant use of salt would have been even more jaw-dropping in much of the ancient Near East and during Jesus' time. Salt, then and now, was mined or obtained by the very slow, time-consuming process of boiling seawater. Salt was traded far and wide, and trade routes, known as salt roads, were extensively used to expand civilization from the time of the Bronze Age forward. At some points in its history, salt was traded in equal weight for gold. And in some parts of the world, salt itself was used as currency. Salt was very, very important. In fact, the human body has evolved so that the consumption of some salt is necessary for human development. Nerves and accurate mental functioning depend on having electrolytes and some salts in our diets. The more plant-based someone's diet is, the less naturally occurring salt is consumed, and the more we want to add it with our sauces and condiments. How many of us always reach for the dressing when we eat a salad? So in our scripture passage, when Jesus calls his disciples salt of the earth, he is not comparing them to the common blue Morton Girl salt canister that we today casually throw into our shopping carts for a few bucks at the grocery store. Salt in Jesus' day was something that was very precious, valuable, something that was hard to get, but something that was necessary for human existence, that was craved by the human body. Salt was an essential commodity that expanded civilizations and had formed the basis for the economy of trade. But the salt in Jesus' time wasn't also as pure as the stuff that we put into our salt shakers on our tables. Frequently it was simply dug out of the earth and it was mixed with other minerals. Some scholars postulate that the salt used in Jesus' day was a mixture of various chlorides of sodium, magnesium, and potassium. And it may even have some small amounts of gypsum mixed in with it. So if your salt in the first century was stored somewhere where it got damp, the water or condensation could quickly leach out the sodium chloride, the table salt, as salt water, and what eventually would be left would be a lump of minerals that would no longer be useful for preserving meats or flavoring foods. It would be salt that had lost its savor. And it would indeed be thrown out onto the ground as something that was useless. The lesson here about salt is that we as Christians are valuable in our work as followers of Christ, but that if we allow ourselves to be diluted by all of the common distractions of the world, that our usefulness can slowly drip away. Now, Jesus' second illustration in our scripture today was about light. In 2002, my sister Lori decided that she was going to move from Michigan to California. And so she asked me to drive with her to Los Angeles, where her company, RCI Travel, had a position for her there. So she sold all of her furniture that she had in her little apartment here in Grand Rapids, and then she got rid of a bunch of her clothes and shoes and mementos, and she loaded up just the things that she really wanted to keep. She loaded them all up in her red convertible. She packed every square inch of her car with her stuff. I was allowed one little carry-on size bag that could fit by my feet, and the two of us set out on our cross-country adventure. It was springtime, and we decided to take the southern route. We went down through St. Louis, and then through Oklahoma, Texas, and drove west through Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was late one night as we were driving through the desert that we crossed the border from Arizona to California. We cheered that we technically had made it to California, although we were still driving through the dark wilderness of the Mojave National Preserve. I will never forget my first sight of the San Bernardino Valley. Lori was driving and I was in the passenger seat. We were coming down through the dark hills where our headlights were the only illumination. There was just scrub brush and rocks and trees when suddenly the view opened up and there was this sea of light below us. The light stretched out farther than I could see to the north and to the south. Street lights, building lights of all colors, headlights of millions of cars, lights of millions of houses, all packed into the valley below us. My jaw dropped. I had always grown up and lived here in West Michigan, where the bright city lights gradually dispersed into suburbs and then scatter out into the countryside. I had never experienced the dramatic effect of suddenly coming out of the dark wilderness and the mountains right into the intense city populated with millions of people like that. Once you came around that mountain corner, there was no way that you could miss that people had built a giant civilization there. But when you were on the other side of the mountain, there was no way to tell how close all of those people were. All the spectacular lights that trailed off to Los Angeles were hidden. Now, as followers of Jesus, we sometimes are like those lights. We may believe in Jesus. We have maybe made a commitment in our hearts to follow the way of loving God and loving others while loving ourselves. But we keep that information strictly private. In our school or with our friends at our jobs, we act just the same as other people. And we never let anyone on to the fact that actually, in the secret valley of our hearts, we believe that we have a bigger purpose with our life. That we have made a commitment to Jesus. Instead of letting the light of Christ shine, instead of displaying it, instead we keep it close, just like everyone else. We want to live in the best neighborhood, have the coolest and most prestigious toys. We want to dress to impress and earn our degree from the best schools and get that corner office. These are some of the mountains that may get in the way of us, of having people see us as the disciples of Jesus Christ that we really are. The light of the love of Christ that we have is not something that was designed to be hidden. Instead, it was designed to be put on a mountaintop, to be set up to serve the world. So, in conclusion, the lesson for us today is that we as disciples of Jesus are like salt and light to the world. My friends, we are valuable and necessary. As followers of Christ, helping our neighbors and sharing the love and the caring of Christ, we make life possible for people that have given up. We can bring the light of God's love into someone's darkness, and we can add flavor to a life that has become dull and bland. This is what we're supposed to be doing as Christians. However, if we let that salt of our identity as disciples of Jesus drip away over time, we will be nothing but a mound of minerals on a shelf that is good for nothing. If we hide our Christianity from others and are afraid to say why we do the things that we do, it's like taking our flashlight and putting a black sock over it. It is not doing the job we were designed to do. My friends, today is the day that we can commit ourselves to being the salt and the light that is needed so much in our communities and in the world. My friends, we can be that courageous voice that speaks up against injustice. We can be the light that others will use to be able to see more clearly. May it be so. Amen.